Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to Midnight Rider Technology Studios, and my usual joke, always under construction. However, if you look behind me and you've been watching before, you'll notice there's been, well, at least some changes. With Renfest behind me, and I do mean that quite literally, this box is my 20 foot by 20 foot pavilion and part of its accessories. This box is my books from the Kansas Authors Pavilion and some of its accessories for that sort of thing, including the banner. Yeah, quite literally, it's behind me. But the rest of it, though, you'll notice there's no shelving there and things like that. Slowly but surely, it's getting prepped for getting painted and all that good stuff. And then the green screen. I finally got a plan on the green screen, which is not going to be to paint the wall like I originally planned. I had seen somebody else's attempts at doing that, and I decided I wanted something more portable, and they went through a whole lot of headache even after they got it painted and having to redo some of it. So, yeah, figured that going with a more portable solution might be a great idea. Anyways, before I kick into the actual blog stuff, please be sure to check out MAYI Learn English. If you're watching this on YouTube, look in the description. You'll find a link to it. MAYI Learn English is an English learning program for non-English speaking children, particularly those with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, things like that. They're an IndieGoGo campaign. They could really use your help. They've got a long ways to go. They've still got 42 days left as I write this, and they're at $92. They really need some help. And it would definitely be a worthwhile thing to throw a little bit of money at. Anyways, so for the last couple of years, actually for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been doing the Kansas Authors Pavilion. Simply put, it's a venue for local authors here from Kansas to get together, and it's part of the Great Plains Renaissance Festival. There's thousands, tens of thousands of people that show up there every year, twice a year. So it's an interesting locked-in group where people are already going from tent to tent and checking everything out. So it's a great way for these authors, including myself, to be exposed to people who have never heard of them before, to sell their books or just to produce awareness. Now the thing with it is, when we first started this whole little exploit, it was actually just me in a tent the very first time around. The director of the fair said, "Hey, you got your new book out. Why don't you come down here and see if you can hawk it?" And I just worked out of his tent. The next time around, I convinced him to give me some space. Not only give me some space, he actually gave me a pavilion to work from. Let me have use of a pavilion to work from, which was great. Wasn't ideal, but it was great. It put us, unfortunately, off the beaten path. It was not part of where the rest of the vendors are and things like that. So it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to market. And of course, us authors were no help either. Now, most authors tend to be a bit introverted. Not all of them. I'm fairly extroverted. I'm doing a webcast. What do you expect? If you ever meet me in person, I tend to be fairly outgoing and yeah, an extrovert. But not all authors are. In fact, most of them tend to seem to run more along the introversion side of the spectrum, which means that you got a lot of people sitting at tables watching the crowds go by and not really doing anything. Well, me and one of the other authors, particularly Lyndon Perry, started doing things like, trying to call people over. And usually it was something simple like, it is Kansas Authors Pavilion, all local authors, come check them out. Not exactly the most powerful marketing. Over the years, we've gotten better at it. We've also gotten in a better location. For instance, I purchased, fortunately through another author, he knew where there was a pavilion setting, a 20 foot by 20 foot pavilion. Just a pavilion, no sides, it's bare minimum thing, but it was something, which allowed us to be on the vendor rows. Well, being in the vendor rows means that we were where people are already looking for stuff. So it was a great place to be. But that still didn't solve our problems, per se, when it came to marketing. Yeah, I purchased a new banner, a 8-foot banner, 6-foot banner, 8-foot banner, I think. Nothing huge, nothing amazing, especially considering the size of the front of the tent is 20 foot. It only covers a small area. And in the last couple of years, though, or should say the last year, the last two of them prior to this one, I'd kind of gotten to the point that I was like, okay, let's do things differently. I really am not too keen on selling my books right at the moment. It's not that I don't want to sell them. It's just I haven't written anything new. I've got 3 books in print: the horror game, the Plastic Army game, and the Story of Gamer Zone. And I just haven't been enthused about selling them. I've got so many things going on my plate right now. I don't have enough time to finish up the books I've got going. I have 5 books I'm writing on. Yeah, I'm insane. I have ADHD. Whatever. Anyways, so instead of spending my time trying to hawk my books, what if I tried to hawk the entire pavilion instead? So I'd go outside in my kilt and stand in front and try and wave people in and say hi, and I just try to chat it up with people. It worked all right. But what I really needed to do was find ways of standing out. So this year I did. The box that I mentioned back over here, it's actually about 3 foot long. Turn it up on end so it's 3 foot tall. I took a platform and set on top of that, would step up there, and suddenly I'm up above the crowd. Now, the area we're in is a very noisy environment. There's acts going on just right beside us. There's all of the first line of vendor row on the westmost wall. So there's tons of things trying to draw people's attention. And we are probably the least sexy looking tent because we don't have swords out front and things like that. All we've got is, well, one's overweight, middle-aged guy in a kilt out front. But now he's on a box. Now, believe it or not, that being on a box changed everything. By putting myself above the crowds, I was able to look down on them and start picking targets. Instead of yelling out, hear ye, come see the great Kansas Authors Pavilion," it doesn't mean much. On the other hand, I could make it personal. I'd look for people. I'd pick them out. I'd say, "You look like you read." They'd stop and they'd look at me. "Oh, yeah, I do." "Well, what do you like to read?" And then I'd bring myself down. I would actually kind of squat down so I'm more closer to eye to them. They'd walk up. And I'd say, so what do you read?" "Well, a little bit of everything." "Hey, that's great. We got a little bit of everything in here. This is the Kansas Authors Pavilion. They're all local authors. There's science fiction, fantasy, vampires, zombies, romance novels, role-playing games, just tons of everything. Go on in and say hi to all the authors." And they would. They would. If I got to the point that I was squatting down, they were going to go in. That was just it. I'd already made the deal. I had made a personal connection at that point. And then on top of that, with the tent has a couple of people in it, it's more likely to draw a couple more people in. So once that happens, once it gets capacity, I have to back off for a little bit. Now, usually what I would do is I'd sit down, relax, or go, deal with people who are at my books and try and sell some of mine. But for the most part, I spent most of the day up there. Even if the tent was full, I might just go ahead and stay up there and relax, smile at people, wave, that sort of thing, rather than calling out. So all of this stuff actually ends up turning into a set of little lessons that some people might be interested in, some people not, and some people might not agree with. So let me enumerate them. Number 1, find a way of marketing yourself above and beyond the rest of the crowd that's already marketing. In this case, I put myself up on a box. Might seem simple, might be so weirdly trivial, but it was. I was completely out of the norm at that point. I was a guy in a kilt. There's tons of them. I'm a middle-aged, overweight guy. There's tons of them too. I'm talking to people. There's tons of people trying to do that too. But by being up on that box, I removed myself from the rest of the marketing that was going on. I was unique at that point. Number 2, personalize it. See, I didn't yell at everybody. If I yelled at everybody, it was hard to get all of those people in. But on the other hand, when I would talk to one person or 2 people, I picked those targets and I said, "You look like somebody who reads." Give them flash them a big smile, and more often than not, they walked up to me. There was a couple. Don't get me wrong; it was not a 100% success rate. There were some people that said, "Well, I don't read." Hey, what am I going to do with that? Nothing. I could burn a lot more effort trying to bring that person in, but why bother? Instead, I let those slide on by. Pick the next target. Now, in online marketing and real world marketing, we have demographics that we work from. Up there, well, I'm just eyeballing it. I'll be honest. Most of the time, I picked women. Because more often than not, I find it easier to start a conversation with women. Might be a little more background, but yeah, I've always found it easier to chat up the gals, so to speak. It wasn't flirting here. It was just marketing, trying to get them up there. Once they got close to me, I squatted down and I talked to them. Even though I was still on top of my box, I squatted down so that they weren't having to be uncomfortable with me. I made the conversation personal, and I made sure that that wasn't uncomfortable for them. I'd ask them, what are you interested in? I've engaged them at that point. I have set the hook and brought it in. Because once they start answering, well, I like science fiction. Hey, we got science fiction in here. Hey, I like westerns. Hey, we don't have any westerns in here. But you really ought to check out so-and-so. It didn't matter really what I said at that point. As long as the next couple of things I said were, there was the Kansas Authors Pavilion, because there's our brand. They're all local authors, because that made it matter, because it's part of the community. And I said, go on in. So you can see how personalizing it matters. How not just shotgunning it, personalizing it will always make you sell better. It will always make your marketing better. If you can find a way to personalize your product, go for it. If you can find a way to take your online marketing and get people engaged, to feel like you're talking directly to them, it matters. They'll make a big difference. And then finally, be sure to be reasonable with your efforts. You'll notice that the ones that didn't work, I let them slide on by. I could keep marketing at them, but it's not going to help. In fact, if I kept marketing at it, if I focused on them, then I was running the risk of not being able to catch somebody else who was more likely to be interested. And by the way, I'm also going to point out in the demographics part, I mentioned that most of the time I talked to the women. And it's not always, don't get me wrong. There was plenty of guys that were walking along that I talked to too. But more often than not, it was the women that I picked, because I knew my competency was often better with talking to women. It's just a thing. Pick your competencies and work with them. I don't mean never step outside of your comfort zone. Trust me, my comfort zone, while I'm outgoing, my comfort zone has never been the idea of standing around in a kilt on top of a 3-foot box yelling at people. That was never something I thought was going to be a cool idea. It worked. And finally, when the tent was really busy, a lot of times I'd stand down. There's no reason for me to oversell. And there's no reason that if the tent is already full, I can't bring more people in. So relax my efforts just a little bit. There's points in marketing where you're probably getting so close to your maximums. You're hoping at least that you're getting close to your maximums for output on product or whatever. Relax it just a little bit. Don't mean turn it off. Just relax it. I still stayed up there a lot of times, just waiting to watch 2-3 people walk out of the tent so I could bring a couple more in. It's a good way. Same can apply to your product. If your product is selling at about the maximum you think it'll sell at, either A, you need to expand. In my case, there's no way for me to build a bigger tent live during an event, so I needed to come up with a different way of dealing with it, which was just kind of cool off for a little bit. It saved my energy, so I could spend my energy better later on down the road. And finally, in all of this, we did this over the years, refining how you market. See, we started off with the whole thing of just sitting around and letting people come to us. It didn't work. In fact, that's the worst way to market ever. Very rarely do things just come to you. Now, I say this, and I'm horrible because at web development, I didn't market. People came to me. It was all word of mouth. Am I rich from web development? No. So obviously I wasn't doing that good at marketing. I helped other people market, but I wasn't doing that good at it for myself. So as we evolved this process, we tried things. Everything ranging from, hey, yelling at people in general and generic terms, to finding a specific way to market to each person as they walked by. And you know what? I still maintain I've never seen the tent remain full nearly as long as I have during this last fall one. And this is really important because this fall fairs are smaller than spring fairs. Just the one here in Kansas and the Wichita, the Great Plains Renaissance Festival here in Wichita, Kansas. The fall one's always smaller than the spring one. So the fact that we could keep the tent full, and I do mean full, during those times, tells me a lot that our marketing was working. What will I do next time? Nearly the same thing. I will end up with standing on the box. I might refine things a little bit, but it's still going to end up being pretty much the same thing. So hopefully if you're an indie game developer or such, hopefully maybe there's some thoughts you can have about how you can stand out from the rest of the marketing crowd, how you can personalize your message and bring it to those people. Anyways, I hope that's gives you some fodder to think about, and I'll talk to you all next time. Bye.